We all know that the Giants and Saquon Barkley are locked in a contract impasse. How can they break the impasse, and what might a realistic contract look like for the running back? I answer all those questions on today's Locked On Giants podcast, coming your way next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. My name is Patricia Traina, your credentialed New York Giants beat writer and longtime Giants reporter over 30 seasons. And I'm welcoming in all my everydayers, all my newcomers, and everybody in between. Appreciate having you check in on the Locked On Giants podcast. We come to you Monday through Friday, wherever you get podcasts. And on today's show, we're going to talk Saquon Barkley. We know that the Giants and Saquon Barkley are involved in an impasse. And I recently did an article. It's actually out, depending on when you're watching this podcast, the article will be out around 8 o'clock on giantscountry.com. And I took a really deep dive into the situation with Saquon Barkley, you know, how it got to this point, what I think the two sides need to do in order to break this impasse. And I even took it a step further. I tried to come up with a contract, a full contract structure for Saquon. And I did all that. You can see the actual spreadsheet is on Giants Country. And actually, if you are watching this podcast on YouTube, I will put the chart that I came up with on the screen. So for those of you who listen to the podcast, you might want to go back later on when you're, at your office or your home. Check it out on YouTube because you'll be able to see the numbers and how I broke them down. So that's coming up a little later on the show. So let's get into the situation here. So as we know, the Giants hold all the cards in this situation. All right. They have the leverage. They have indicated that they are comfortable with the prospect of Saquon Barkley playing on the franchise tag. Saquon Barkley, meanwhile, protesting the franchise tag. He's not at the voluntary team activities. He probably will not show up all spring. He's off working by him, working out by himself and doing his training. And there's been some early talk that he might even extend his absence if he doesn't get a long-term deal by the July 17th deadline, that he might even skip part of training camp and the preseason, where, to be honest with you, in preseason, I doubt he would play that much anyway. But I see it as Saquon is kind of playing a dangerous game with regards to this franchise tag. But actually, let me back up a little bit here. It has been reported that Barkley and his agent turned down the Giants bye-week offer, which was paid an annual $12.5 million per year. It was also reported by several media outlets that they turned down another offer that would have paid him about $13 million with a chance to earn up to $14 million with incentives. Some people have said that Barkley is looking to get paid on par with Christian McCaffrey, who earns about $16 million per year, to which his agent, Barkley's agent, denied that report. So, you're sitting there and you're saying, okay, you turned down a deal that could pay you up to $14 million. You're saying you don't want $16 million. So what's $1 million? You can't, what's the big deal in giving up $1 million? So I'm sitting there, I'm saying something doesn't quite sound right. So I sat down and I thought about it and I said, okay, the only thing I can think of is that maybe it's not the money. It could be how the contract is structured. It could be the guaranteed money, which of course we know is the main thing when it comes to these contracts. So, absent any clarification from Saquon's agent or Saquon himself, I don't know exactly what the problem is, but here's what I do know. If they dig in And if Saquon's agent says, you know what, we are going to have you play on the franchise tag this year in 2023, and we are going to hedge our bets that you have another big year, that you stay healthy, that you, ball out, that the Giants, who will have other guys they need to address next year in the offseason, whose contracts are coming up for renewal, will not put the franchise tag on you a second time. If that is the approach that Saquon's agent is taking, it's a very, very dangerous and foolish approach. And here's why. Saquon Barkley has a spotty injury history. We all know that. We know about the torn ACL. We know about the high ankle sprain that he had the year after. He had a high ankle sprain actually the year before he had the ACL. And even last year, even though he played through, in 16 of the games that for which he was activated in, he still dealt with a shoulder injury. So here's why digging in doesn't really behoove Barkley or benefit him in any way. If his agent says, okay, you know what, we're going to hedge our bets on your preparation, your skills, et cetera, folks, all it takes is for one freak injury, whether it be somebody stepping on the back of his foot, like what happened a couple years ago in Dallas when he had the high ankle sprain, whether it be somebody rolling into his knees, whether it be him taking a wrong step on either a turf field or a grass field. One freak injury is all it takes. And if Saquon ends up missing any time whatsoever due to injury, his production's going to drop, and his chances of getting the type of payday that he might be looking for will drop right along with it. It's too big of a gamble. All right. The franchise tag, as we know, once signed, will pay him or guarantee him at least $10.1 million. Great. That's just wonderful. But if you're Saquon, doesn't it make more sense to come to some sort of agreement on a multi-year deal that'll guarantee you a lot more than 10.1 million? I think it does. Does he think it does? I don't know. He hasn't spoken on it. His agent obviously, is not looking to negotiate through the press, and that's fine. That's their prerogative. But actions sure do speak louder than words. And you sit there and you say to yourself, what are they waiting for? Why isn't this deal done? Why wasn't it done when there was salary cap space to be had? What's the holdup? And you can only assume, and I know that's dangerous, but you can only assume that maybe the Giants see things with the contract one way and Barkley and his rep see it another way. And that impasse needs to break. Now, coming up, I'm going to talk about how I think both sides need to give a little and what they need to give in order to start thawing the ice that exists between them. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Hey, Giant fans, if you're like me and you want to make healthier snack choices, but you don't want to compromise on taste, then you got to try a Built Bar or Built Puff. These tasty treats are healthy and amazing, with each bar or puff covered in 100% real chocolate. It's like eating a candy bar, but without all the fat, carbs, and sugar. And with Built Bars and Built Puffs, you're getting a generous dose of protein in every serving. We're talking on average 17 grams, with most bars boasting about 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar. And did you know that you don't have to wait for your box to be shipped from Built? Just pop into your local Sam's Club or Walmart to get your box of assorted flavors. If you prefer, you can go to built.com, use our special promo code LOCKEDON15 and save 15% off your first order. Either way, make a healthy choice, make a delicious choice. Try a Built Bar or Built Puff today and thank me later. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. We're talking Saquon Barkley. It's a topical conversation. I know a lot of people are like, wake me up when something happens. I get it. I kind of feel the same way. But at the same time, when the topic is there, you got to kind of address it. And those of you who know me, you know that I like to do salary cap work, that I kind of know my way around salary cap work. So I put together, a contract, which I'm going to unveil to you in the next segment. And I also have thoughts about this whole saga with Saquon Barkley. And in this segment, I want to talk about what I think both sides need to kind of give up a little bit, or give up, period, in order to kind of bridge this gap that exists between the two of them. I'm going to start with the Giants. All right. Now, there are people that are applauding the Giants for their hardline stance with Barkley. The Giants having taken both offers that they initially made to Barkley off the table because, for whatever reason, because the market is like, oh, wow, instead of paying him $14 million, the market's only dictating that he should be paid, $10 million or whatever the amount is, a lower amount. In the case of the Giants, they put two offers on the table, one for $12.5 million per year, that made during the bye week, and one for, again, allegedly $13 million with a chance to make up to $14 million. That one was pulled, as was the $12.5 million. So now you have General Manager Joe Schoen basically saying, you know what? We pulled the offer. We put the franchise tag on him. We're going to start negotiations from square one. Sorry, disagree. I disagree. Here's the thing with Saquon. He's been a team leader. He has been the face of your franchise since 2018. Last year, he accounted for nearly 30% of your offensive production. You don't do that. All right. Anything, you put the offer for $13 million with a chance to make it $14 million, you put that up back on the table. And you say to him, Saquon, this is our final offer to you. When you decide to wake up and realize, that you're not worth anything more than that the market doesn't warrant that you be paid more, that this offer as compared to the market is pretty generous. The contract is here waiting for you to sign. So I don't agree with the strong arm tactic. I think while I can understand what Joe Schoen is doing, I think it's a bad look, especially with a high profile player like that. So if that's the approach the Giants are taking, and again, based on reports, that seems to be what they're taking, it's a bad look. Put the deal back on the table. If you were willing to pay him that once before, why take it off the table and say, okay, you know what? You said no, we screwed up because we overquoted it and the market says this. So, we're pulling the offer. It just doesn't look good, folks. I'm sorry. I don't agree with that tactic. Now, you might feel otherwise, and that's fine. I don't agree with it. I think if I were in Saquon's shoes and they said, okay, you know what? We're pulling the offer, I'd take that as an insult. Now, I don't think Saquon is completely innocent in this impasse. Because again, what is he looking for per year? $12.5 million. Okay, I understand why he probably turned that down. Because at the time when it was made, he was the offense. And he probably figured he could continue on the path he was and optimize what he was earning. I get that. The $13 million with the chance to make it $14 million would have still put him as one of the top 5 highest paid running backs in the league. And considering that Saquon said he wasn't looking to reset any markets, for him to turn that down, now again, unless the reason he turned it down was because of the guaranteed money being low or the structure of the deal, which we don't know. Those are two very important factors that I wish we knew the answer to, because that would provide a lot of clarity. But if he strictly turned it down based on the amount per year, then dude, what are you doing? You just, what are you doing? You knew what the franchise tag was going to be. You knew that by turning it down, and the second that Daniel Jones signed his contract, you knew you were going to get that franchise tag. No team, since you have gotten that franchise tag, by the way, has come beating down your door looking to sign you for more than that franchise tag. So in essence, you just screwed yourself out of money, potentially. So The bottom line, folks, is that the Giants and Saquon, in my opinion, at any rate, they need to meet halfway on this. Saquon needs to, if he's asking for more than what the Giants are willing to pay, and again, we don't know, he needs to be more realistic. The Giants need to put that last offer back on the table. Now, in the time that, that has passed, maybe they have done that. I don't know. I'm just going by what we know to be true as of the last time we got updates from Joe Shane on the matter. And I said it before, I'll say it again. It's not a good look when you start yanking offers off the table. I mean, you could play hardball without being hardball. It's like if you just say, hey, Saquon, this is our final offer, take it or leave it. That's playing hardball. Pulling it off the table, don't go for that. So both sides, I think, need to give a little something. There needs to be a common ground. They still haven't come to that common ground, obviously, because if they had, a deal would have been done. And my concern is that this will drag on to the 11th hour. Do I think a deal will get done? Right now, I would say no. I would say no. Can a deal get done? Absolutely. I mean, like I said, in the next segment, I'm going to talk about a deal that I put together that I think makes sense and should make everybody happy. But I don't know what Saquon is looking for in terms of his structure. I don't know for a fact what his agent is advising him. I can only guess. I know based on what Saquon has said in the past about wanting to be a Giant for life. I know the Giants have said that they would like Saquon to be a Giant for life. I remember about how last year Saquon gambled on himself when everybody was kind of doubting whether he would ever be the Saquon we saw in 2018. Saquon was telling everybody who asked that he was going to not only be the guy that we saw in 2018, but he was going to be better. So I just wonder if, there's a advice floating out to Saquon to gamble, to take that gamble, that you're going to have a good year, that you're going to stay healthy, and you're going to earn Christian McCaffrey type money. Wouldn't surprise me. You can't rule that out. But as I said, it's a foolish gamble. It's if it pays off, great. But the odds of it paying off, given the position he plays, not very high. And not just because of injury, but the Giants have now added rookie Eric Gray to the pot. And when Brian Dable was asked about possibly reducing Saquon's workload, he didn't rule it out. So if you have the Giants planning to maybe go for more of a committee approach in 2023 at running back, what are the odds Saquon is going to top his numbers from last year? Which, by the way, his rushing yardage total was only 5 yards more than what he had as a rookie. Not very good odds. So, if you pay based on production, I think it's too big of a gamble personally to, if I'm advising Saquon, I say, look, dude, the risks far outweigh the reward here. And to me, it's just better to take a multi-year deal as long as it's in the neighborhood of what you're looking for. It might be on the low end. Take the deal and just call it a day. Now, what kind of deal are we potentially talking about? I'm going to tell you right after this. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, and we are covering the Giants still 5 days a week. Starting next week, the Giants begin phase 3 of the offseason program, OTAs. And the Giants kick them off on Monday, but the media is not back in the building until Thursday. So we will have access to the OTAs starting Thursday, every third OTA, I think it is. So I will be at next Thursday's OTA and just keep on bringing you whatever content I can gather up for you. So appreciate you tuning in. Appreciate you making us your first listen of the day or your first watch of the day. Hope you will continue to tune in. All right, let's talk about what a new deal for Barkley might include and how it might look like. Now, what I went and did was I went back and I looked at what the Giants put into the deals for Daniel Jones, for Bobby Okereke, and for Dexter Lawrence. None of those deals, as we know, were longer than 4 years. So right off the bat, if I had to take a guess on the length of what Barkley's going to get, I would say at most a 4-year deal. Now, whether that's a true 4 years or 3 years and a voidable year or two years and 2 voidable years, that I'm going to get to in just a moment with you. But let's talk about some of the vehicles, the mechanisms that will probably land in Saquon's new deal. All right. So the first, a 6-figure workout bonus. All right. Jones and Dexter Lawrence both got $500,000 per year as a workout bonus. Have no reason to think Barkley will get anything less than that. All right. So that's one way to push some money into a current year without choking up your cap. Barkley will likely get a roster bonus towards the end of the multi-year deal. All right. So, for example, with Dexter Lawrence, if he is on the roster in the final year of his extension that he recently signed, he will collect $2.5 million as a roster bonus in 2027. Roster bonuses, by the way, based on how the Giants have structured those, they pay out on the 5th day of the new league year. So that would be the timing for that. Jones, by the way, only has a $500,000 roster bonus in the final year of his deal, which, as a FYI, suggests to me that last year of the deal is just not going to happen. At that point, they're either going to tear up the contract and extend him again or go in a different direction, depending on what happens. All right. Given Barkley's spotty injury history, I would not be surprised to see him get a per game roster bonus incentives. All right. Now, Jones doesn't have that in his deal, which kind of surprised me. But Dexter Lawrence has it in his deal, which also surprised me. And the reason why it surprised me is because Dexter Lawrence has been an Iron Man. That said, Dexter Lawrence also plays a very difficult position in the pit where there is a lot of contact, a lot of pounding, just like running back takes a lot of pounding and a lot of, physicality is necessary. So if you're talking a per game roster bonus up to $1 million, comes out to about 58,000 some change. And the beauty of it is if Barkley or any of those players who have that per game roster bonus, if they have to miss time, the Giants get a cap credit at the end of the year. So it's deducted and they get a credit. And, I saw something, somebody posted on Twitter. I don't remember who it was, but they made the comment. They said, if the Giants get a credit, they can use that money to sign a replacement if they need to, I don't think that's quite how it works because I don't think the credit hits until the following year, but it was a good thought. But yeah, per game roster bonus, I think definitely would help. The first 2 years of both Jones's deal and Lawrence's deal is that the combined guaranteed money was more than the cost of the franchise tag at the respective positions. So, for example, Daniel Jones had $82 million guaranteed in the first 2 years of his deal, which was approximately $11 million more than the $71.3 million estimated it would have cost the team to tag him this year and next year. I expect the same to be done for Barkley. It just makes too much sense. And plus, if you're Barkley's agent, you don't take a deal for anything less than that. It just doesn't make sense. The performance incentives is another thing. All right. So Daniel Jones has performance incentives, both likely to be earned and not likely to be earned. The difference being is likely to be earned automatically has to be deducted from this year's cap. Not likely to be earned can take effect the following year if the achievements are reached. So an example of a likely to be earned incentive for Barkley, who had, I believe, 10 that. Well, actually, let me back up here. Let me give you an example. So if you say to him, okay, Saquon, we're going to give you $1 million if you rush for 1,000 yards. That's a likely to be earned incentive because he did that last year. So likely to be earned incentives are based on what the player accomplished the previous year because, they did it once before, they can do it again. A not likely to be earned incentive. Saquon, we're going to give you $2 million if you win the league's rushing title. Well, he didn't do that last year. So now it becomes a not likely to be earned. Whereas if he does win the rushing title and the Giants have a $2 million clause in there, that money gets kicked into the following year's cap. So it's a way for the team to kind of benefit and save themselves some money when the cap, you kick money into the following year and that actually, the cap will go up a little bit. So it actually kind of helps you absorb the blow. For running back, the incentives, the individual incentives that are covered include total yards, average yards based on 100 minimum attempts, and rushing touchdowns. So I fully expect that any deal that Barkley signs with the Giants will include incentives for one, if not all three of those categories. All right. Now, having gone over that, what would the new contract look like? All right. I'm going to put it up on the screen for you here so that you can see the way I've broken it down. Now, what I did was I worked off of the last reported offer of $13 million per year with the chance to top $14 million. Okay, so the way I have structured this deal is obviously I have a lower number for Barkley, not that much. I have a low P5 salary. P5 means base salary. I gave him a $20 million signing bonus. I have the per game roster bonuses in there, the workout bonuses. I have a total roster bonus if he is on the team as of the 5th day of the year. And I included incentives. And you'll notice that even though this deal is for 4 years, I made it more of a 3-year deal because the 4th year is a voidable year to help with that signing bonus distribution. And at no point in this contract does it come close to topping 10% of the total estimated cap. So the highest number is actually 8.2% of the cap, that in year number 2 of the deal, when everything kind of jumps up a little bit. But otherwise, the cap percentage for Barkley, 3.6 would be for this year, 8.2 the following year, 7.6 in 2025, and then the voidable year where the only money we're talking about is the dead money from the signing bonus, the prorated signing bonus, 1.6%. The APY of this deal comes out to $13.895 million. So just a little bit shy of the $14 million that Barkley, the last deal that was on the table for Barkley, was reported to be at. So a pretty standard deal, a pretty simple deal. I didn't get too crazy with, incentives and stuff like that. I figured $1 million. Again, I think one or all three of the incentives are going to be covered that I mentioned before. And, to me, I think this deal is a fair deal. Now, there are some points that I want to make about the deal. The first point I want to make, like I said, the average APY just comes to under 14 million, which is reportedly the max APY of the last contract on the table. The incentives that are in the deal, all likely to be earned, which means, again, they would count against the current year's cap in which they're accounted for. Barkley, as I mentioned, at no point in this deal does the cap number exceed 8.2% of the projected cap. The franchise tag estimated for a running back in 2024 is 13.717. So when I structured the second year of the deal, it was important to make sure that deal, that particular year number 2 of the deal, exceeded that 13.717 million. I didn't include a roster bonus for Barkley in the first year of the deal since he would be getting 20 million in terms of a signing bonus. The final year, as I mentioned, I made voidable. let's see, no workout bonus in the first year of the deal, because quite honestly, Barkley's been staying away. And if this deal were to come to fruition, or any deal for that matter, Barkley will probably skip the entire offseason program. So why even put the money in there at this point? Doesn't make any sense. The per game roster bonus, you see, it says $1 million. It's not $1 million per game. It's $58,823 per game that he is active. And if you multiply that times 17, you get the $1 million. That is a likely to be earned incentive. If Barkley misses any time, that's how much $58,823 will be credited back to the Giants cap to be used in the following year. If you look at this deal, you could say thanks to the voidable year, you can argue that the deal's APY is actually about 18.526 million. It's not quite how it works. It's actually an optical illusion, but if you wanted to maybe soothe egos, you could say, look, in reality, this is what you're getting, even though the actual APY is a lot less than that. And this is not reflected in the graphic that was on the screen. But in addition to the signing bonus being guaranteed, I would guarantee the first 2 years of the base salaries and obviously the 2024 roster bonus, which when you add that all up, it comes to roughly 62.2% of the total contract guaranteed. So that's not a bad deal, because if you go back, look at the guaranteed money in the Lawrence deal, in the Jones deal, each guy is getting at least 50% of his contract guaranteed. So 62.2%, not too bad for Barkley. Now, there's actually a little wiggle room in this structure that I propose. If I need to sweeten the pot, if I'm the Giants and I'm presenting this deal that I showed you to Barkley, here's how I sweeten the pot. I say to him, okay, you know what? If you were on the roster in 2025 and you collect that 2.5 million roster bonus, I will consider that a trigger to guarantee half of your base salary. So therefore, that would boost his guaranteed money even further. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's the contract I have put together for Saquon Barkley. Now, is that what the Giants are thinking? Is that what his agent is thinking? That I don't know. But I thought this contract was a fair deal, all things considered, But again, I go back to the point I made before. The Giants need to put a deal back on the table. And I would say put the deal that they took off the table. If that deal needs to be tweaked because there was something in the structure that, maybe Barkley didn't like, that's why you go back and forth. But just based on the conversations that it seems that the two sides have had, and based on Joe Shane's responses to questions about Barkley, he has said that they're not close. And usually when you say the two sides aren't close, usually that means there's a disagreement about the total value of the deal. And that's, like I said, the big head scratcher for me. Is it the total value or is it the structure? I think it's the structure, just based on what's come out since then. But we won't know, like I said, unless Kim Miali generously tells us what is going on. And I don't think she will, because, it doesn't really pay to negotiate in public. All right. So final thoughts on this, folks. Barkley has said he wants to remain a Giant. The Giants, both John Mara and Joe Shane, have said that they would like Barkley to remain a Giant. That's half the battle right there. Both sides want each other. But the money needs to be competitive. And the Giants need to back down a little bit off this hardline stance that they seem to have taken. Barkley needs to back down a little bit and realize that you can't get everything you want in the contract, that you have to give a little bit. That's how this works. Maybe he has, I don't know, but I would think that if he has given up a little bit more, maybe they'd be a little bit closer. So we'll see. We will see if it comes to fruition. But I do think, folks, that, or I would hope, I should say, that at the end of the day, Barkley realizes that a multi-year deal with at least 60% guaranteed money is a lot better than the Tag's 1-year guarantee worth $10.1 million. I would hope that his agent is not advising him to, you know what, let's just play on the tag. You ball out, and then come next year, you'll hit the market and we'll be able to get you more money. Because that is a risk, as I mentioned before, for the reasons I mentioned before. So stay tuned, folks. Will this whole saga be a distraction for the Giants? Well, you know that there's going to be questions about it, because we wouldn't be doing our job in the media if we didn't ask for updates. But I don't think it's going to be a distraction to the point where, Brian Dable, head coach, who's going to be talking to the media at the OTAs, I don't think he's going to, say much about it. I don't think the players are going to say anything that's going to be too, inflammatory towards their teammate. So I don't think it's going to be a distraction. I don't think it's a worry at this point. It becomes a worry when we get closer to July 17th and there's been absolutely no movement, no discussion, no nothing. That's when maybe we get a little panicky. But again, we'll see how it plays out. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us here on today's Locked On Giants podcast. Again, thank you for tuning in, making us your first listen of the day, or if watching on YouTube, your first watch of the day. The plan for tomorrow, if I have enough questions to do it, is to do a complete mailbag, your questions, so I can send you off into the weekend and having answered your questions. So that is the plan for tomorrow. And if not, I'll call an audible, but that's what I'm looking to do. So thank you very much for tuning into the Locked On Giants podcast. We'll see you tomorrow, Giant fans.